Hey everyone, welcome to my review of Sorin Ravenous Neonate, the brand new Planeswalker from the Puzzle Masters 2 block. So this is the first Planeswalker that Webcore has given me to review here. First off, thanks so much for that. And yeah, so we get 3 new Puzzle Masters 2 Planeswalkers for this set. And this one is black and white. And let's talk about his abilities. So we're looking at what we got here. Start with his life totals. We got 96 and 96. I don't think any of the Sorins have a lot of hit points, but it's a little bit of a bummer because I'm someone who loves high life totals on my Planeswalkers. I don't really like anything under 100. Even 100 or around it is kind of pushing it for me personally. I know that he can gain a lot of life back from his abilities, but you never really want to be on that edge of almost losing just to, even if there are ways to gain your life back fairly easily. The less of a chance of dying from one shot, the better, I say. So that's just my little spiel on hit points. Mana bonuses, doing the same sort of thing that Duretti had, where we get kind of like a stairs case of mana bonuses here. So we get a +4 on black, +3 on white, +2 on green and red. Interesting, no mana bonus on blue. So there are a couple things that we can do to take advantage of that. We can use Cryptics to always get 5 gems converted to black on our turn. And then you can use Sunken Citadel to bump up your mana bonuses across 4 colors. Yeah, it's definitely a viable way of going about raising your mana bonuses across the board. Sunken Citadel is a great card, even though I hardly ever use it. Just not really my thing. Cue Gauze's head exploding. But you know, that's just my play style. I personally like to use Leyline of the Guild Pact a lot more over Sunken Citadel. But, you know, you do you, boo-boo. So yeah, let's get into the abilities here. We got the first one, Mysterious Invitation. This costs 12 loyalty to trigger. Create 5 food tokens. Then, if you have 2 or less creatures gain control target opposing creature, then that creature gains stun counter 1. Very good ability, especially if you are in the early game trying to load up your side of the board and they get a quick start on you, drop a Rakdos on you right away or something like that. Definitely don't want a Rakdos on their side causing you trouble, not letting you build up to where you need to go. So being able to steal that creature, even if it takes a turn or two to be able to attack with it, is still a very relevant ability. And then creating 5 food tokens is cool. You know, gold tokens are still way better than food tokens overall, but we're trying to gain life here, and I'll show you why. So creating 5 food tokens is decent at doing that. And then this is creating simple tokens for other things that rely on simple tokens to be on the board, such as collecting evidence, Guillaume, anything like that. Nocturnal Buffet. Ability 2, create a Faithful Servant token and create 3 vampire tokens. And these are the vampires that are just 1/1 but with lifelink. And the token is a support. It is also a vampire, huh? I didn't realize that. But it's got 3 shields. I don't know how much that matters, but at the beginning of combat on your turn, your vampire creatures get +X/+X until the beginning of your next turn. X is the amount of life you gained this turn. So this is where we can really scale up with our buffing and therefore the damage we do with our vampires. And I really like this ability. I think people maybe kind of dismiss this as a little bit of a weaker ability, but if you build your deck around gaining life, this can really help end games faster for you. And I think that this is where his raw power lies in this ability here. And I'll definitely get into showing you different ways of taking advantage of that ability. So let's get into Feeding the Soul, ability 3. This is actually the cheapest ability he has. It costs 10 loyalty to get there. It's an interesting way of designing this Planeswalker where they put the cheapest ability at the bottom. Not sure why they do that. It kind of looks awkward to me, but it's a minor quibble, I guess. But yeah, opposing creatures gain imminent death. That's very nice. Destroy all simple tokens. The thing you have to be careful with about this is that it will destroy all simple tokens, not just yours. So if your opponent is playing Oko with a lot of gold tokens out, at least he won't be able to take advantage of the Grand Heist token in that way, but you are feeding him a lot of mana. And then gain X life. X is the number of food tokens destroyed. The only thing I don't really like about this ability is how long the animations take to destroy all the simple tokens. You watch it happen one by one, and that's a little bit annoying. But it is a decent ability there. The gaining life will help if you have the vampire token down, Faithful Servant. So that's something to think about when you're using this ability. But I would say I mostly use this ability to give my opposing creatures imminent death. And then he's got a passive ability. Not a lot of dual color planeswalkers have passive abilities, but since these are puzzle masters planeswalkers, I think they all have passive abilities. And this is this one's. At the beginning of your turn, if you control simple or vampire token, your opponent loses 1 life and you gain 3 life. To me, this is just a whatever passive ability. It doesn't do a lot for me necessarily. It does make sure that you at least get a +3 buff on your vampires when they attack with the Faithful Servant token. That's really the only thing it's doing much for me. Gaining 3 life is fine, I guess. Opponent losing 1 life. There are a couple things that trigger when your opponent loses life, but you have to build for it. Captive Kingpin, the Masterpiece creature, get something out of it, but that's whatever. There are better ways of making your opponent trigger life loss, but at least you don't have to build for it that much. Let's talk about the pros. Good synergy with all of his abilities together and with vampires. The buffing of the second ability can infinitely scale in theory. I've definitely gotten it to pretty large numbers. And then his third ability can remove all your opponent's creatures, provided that they're not, super reinforced. But giving your opponent's creatures all imminent death is pretty nice. It's like having a portal to Phyrexia to make sure that your opponents start losing their creatures right away. And yeah, the cons are that his abilities mainly revolve around vampires, so it requires you to include them in your deck to fully take advantage of them. And the abilities are balanced, though not necessarily high powered. They're all pretty good abilities, though. So there is what I think about him at a glance. And let's check out the decks that I built for him.
All right. So this first deck is a peasant deck, but it tends to win just as easily as my other decks here. So I thought it would be a great way to showcase that he's not reliant completely on really overpowered cards. So pretty much this deck revolves around Galta and Mavrin and the power and utility that you can get out of it. So these vampire tokens that Galta and Mavrin creates are the same that you create with both his second ability and Sorin Grim Nemesis, the Vanguard. So create X vampire tokens. X is the number of opposing creatures. And then when this creature attacks, you may create X vampire tokens. X is the number of creatures you control. So what you could do if you want to build up your vampire stack easily, you first hit this vampire token +2, and then when Galton Mavrin attacks, you create more vampire tokens to stack upon the ones that you created. So if you don't, though, your first creature gets +Y/+Y and gains trample. So what I found is the best way to go about this is to create some vampires to stack up first and get them kind of large. He uses second ability, gain some life, and then hit the +Y/+Y, and then that buff becomes permanent on your first creature. And yeah, you just keep doing that over and over again, and you will just eventually get so large, and your vampires will be so huge when they attack that you will win. And that's pretty much how the battles have gone for me. Edgar Charm Groom is an interesting one. He is a vampire, but he's got haste, and he has Berserker, so he's a little bit of removal built in, creature based. But the nice thing about him is that he can bring himself back from the grave and attacking hastily right away. So this creature can eat up some removal that your opponent might throw at you. And the nice thing is it's got haste, so when you bring him back to the battlefield, you can go ahead and take advantage of the buffs that you get from his second ability token and take advantage of it right away. So how this works is, so this creature dies, gets destroyed, and then this coffin token is on the board. At the beginning of your turn, create a black vampire knight token. That's a different type of vampire, but if you have three creatures on the board, then this vampire will also take advantage of any life gained when you use the second ability. And then after a couple turns, this support gets destroyed, and then Edgar comes back to the battlefield to do whatever he needs to do. Again, Leyline of the Guild Pact, Cryptics, and Shadowy Backstreet are my mana generation engines here. At the beginning of your turn, convert 4 gems to white or black. For 7 mana, that's really nice utility. So, very good card. I recommend this shell for dual color walkers for mana generation. Leyline of the Guild Pact, Cryptics, and then whatever 2 colors that their corresponding land goes to. Molten Collapse is just good all around removal. Terror Tide is an interesting card I just started playing around with. All opposing creatures get -X, -X. X is the number of cards in your graveyard. And then the way that we will be pumping that up is with Breach the Multiverse. And then this way, with playing Breach the Multiverse, you can sometimes steal relevant cards for you from your opponent and use them to your advantage. Like I stole a Healer of the Pride, and then that obviously helped me pump up my second ability to make my vampires huge and makes me win even quicker. So this is a pretty solid, pretty fun deck. That's a lot of no nonsense. I got some fun decks here to show you, so let's move on to the next one. In this deck, we've kind of upgraded our vampires a bit here. We got Lord Xander the Collector. He's been a staple in the game since he's come out. An awesome creature. When this creature enters the battlefield, your opponent discards 2 cards. That is probably the main reason that he's in here. But also, eventually, he'll start gaining your loyalty if you've milled enough of your opponent's graveyard. But yeah, we're mostly using him for his ETB. Jaleva Nefalious Scourge is going to be a great way to grab the spells that we want to make our combos succeed. The only thing is they changed her. They changed the way. The only thing is they changed the way stored mana works. So you can no longer get a fully charged Jaleva when you play Meeting of the Five or another round, but she's still worth using in this deck. I'll show you why in a bit here. Trouble in Pairs is just a good card. You don't necessarily need this card for any other reason in this deck other than it's just a good card, and it really helps to gain loyalty from it. When your opponent activates a loyalty ability or a Vanguard ability, gain 15 loyalty. So if you're going against a Guff deck or something like that, you're going to be getting your loyalty right away up to the max. So another round is really fun because it's going to be doing a few things for us. Not only is it going to be copying Lord Xander, making him able to discard a couple cards from your opponent, but also it's going to be reinforcing our creatures, which will be pretty relevant, and I'll show you in a sec why here. Mox Pearl and Mana Crypt are going to be the way we gain mana for the most part. So what we're going to be doing is using Lantern Flare to gain life, and then that will pump up our vampires once we've had our second ability on the board. So that is why we want to gain loyalty quickly and consistently so that we can spam his second ability and get a lot of vampire tokens and gain a lot of life from them. So, deal X damage to target opposing creature, gain X life. X is the number of creature cards you control, including their reinforcements. So that is why another round is relevant here. And then the cleave basically doubles the amount of life we gain here. So for 10 mana, we can gain an amount of life that can scale up every time. And the thing about Lantern Flare is you can only cast this card if there's an opposing creature to damage. And that is why Stroke of Midnight is here. Not only is it very cheap removal for white, but also it creates a human token under your opponent's control. And so no matter what, even if we don't have a creature to target with Lantern Flare, we can create one with Stroke of Midnight. And so we can hit that human token with Lantern Flare if we want, but that will always ensure that we can cast this card when we need to. And then Vanish into Eternity is nice because it's a card that can deal with supports as well. And if it's exiling the opposing card with the greatest mana value, it's likely getting rid of a pretty nasty card that is in play. So it's a nice one to fetch with Jaleva when you need it. But for the most part, we're going to just be trying to grab the cards that help us with our combo. So yeah, I hope that you like the idea behind this deck, and let me share with you the final deck. So I feel that this Planeswalker was really meant to use Healer of the Pride because the way his second ability works is that it pumps up the amount of damage that your vampires can do with the amount of life you gain before you attack. So if you're creating a bunch of food tokens and a bunch of enlist gems, so whenever you match those, you're going to be gaining life. And what we want to do is we can create a lot of vampire tokens with haste with Arrogant Bloodlord. At the beginning of your turn, if this card is in your graveyard, create X vampire tokens. X is the number of different creatures in your graveyard, then exile this card. And that's what we're going to be doing. Breach the Multiverse is a good way to get some vampires on the board for us. We have a bunch of creatures in our deck for that reason because we're going to be putting creatures into our graveyard. And then what we're going to be doing is making those vampires come out of the graveyard. And then Healer of the Pride and Guillaume will be activated from those, giving us tons of life and tons of opportunity to create lots of life gain for us. Cryptics and Leyline of the Guild Pact are there to gain us some mana while we set up our board state. But Leyline of the Guild Pact is also going to be relevant because we can do the overflow and destroy a bunch of food tokens with that card. So that's another great way of gaining some life as we go. Chimil, the Inner Sun, just a good all around card, and it will help us get the pieces we want and put mana into them. Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh, is just kind of here to, stall with the +3 and then exile any threatening creature that might be on the board while we try to get our stuff going. So, just a good defensive card. Shattergang Brothers, just in case we need it to put onto the board, take advantage of those food tokens. But it's also going to be another creature that we can put into our graveyard from our library to fuel the arrogant bloodlord vampires. And then Urgent Necropsy is going to be good to use with not only his first ability, but with Guillaume, creating all those food tokens, and then we can cast this and get rid of anything else that's on the board. We got three pretty decent ways of removing threats from the board with those bottom three cards there. And then we just cast Breach the Multiverse to get more vampires into our graveyard that we can then take advantage of with the healer and Guillaume combo. And then, as always, we're relying on the second ability token, gaining us life. And then we're going to have a vampire to hit the opponent with, and it should be a very strong vampire. And then, even as you go, you can just spam his second ability and get a bunch of vampire tokens for Healer of the Pride and Guillaume to play around with as you get more and more of your creatures into the graveyard. So, very fun deck. I really think that if you have Healer of the Pride, some sort of token generator, preferably vampires, and then Guillaume, that's like the ticket for this Planeswalker. Healer of the Pride plus tokens is really what I feel like this Planeswalker was meant to do. All right, let's get to our final grades.
All right. As usual, start with hit points. We got max hit points of 96. So that's a C minus for me. I just really want more hit points in all my Planeswalkers. Flavor of the Planeswalker is not a big deal for me. So I'd just rather have more of a hit point advantage in that case. Mana spread, similar to Duretti, giving it a B plus. No downside, but I always want the higher upside. Really can't complain too much about the mana spread here. You can do a lot with it. We got ability 1. I'm going to give it an A minus. Being able to steal your opponent's being able to steal your opponent's creature, as long as they don't have hexproof, is always going to be pretty relevant. And it doesn't cost too much. And then all the food tokens that you create, you can also take advantage of in certain circumstances. Ability 2, giving it also an A minus. It doesn't seem all that strong in theory, but in practice, you can do a lot with it. I do love that it can scale to however high of an amount you can heal yourself for, and you can do a decent amount of healing. So he's pretty good for that. Ability 3, I'm giving it also an A minus. Mainly due to the ability to basically wipe your opponent's side's creatures in a way. Obviously, it's not going to work as much if your opponents have reinforced their creatures a lot or they're playing a lot of tokens, but still, for the most part, this should really help you gain back some advantage in terms of board state there if they're killing you with their creatures, and then that will help to slow that down a lot. Passive ability, I don't think it's that great. Giving it a C. I guess it does something for you, but really not enough for me to think of it as a really strong passive ability. There are definitely better passive abilities in the game. Looking at Teferi, Chronoclast probably has the best passive ability in the game, but Ren and Realmbreaker are also great. Ren and 7 also has a good passive ability, so that's what I'm thinking of when it comes to S tier passives. Versatility. So he can do a lot with his abilities, although they are very much based on gaining life and using vampires. but he does a good job with them. They are very strong if you are using vampires and you're building around gaining life. That's never a bad thing to build a deck around. Gaining life can help you not lose. So I'm giving him a B plus on versatility. Card utility. So as long as you're using vampires and cards that gain you lots of life, he's very good with them. But if you're not building around vampires, his card utility kind of drops a lot. I feel like there are a lot of other black and white planeswalkers that aren't as thematically tied to a certain creature type. So as long as we have good vampires in standard, I think he will be a relevant walker to use in certain circumstances. So I'm giving him a B on card utility. And now fun. As always, I give the caveat that fun for me may not be the same thing for you. Case in point, if you don't like looping decks, you probably won't have a lot of fun playing with some of my red blue cards, playing with some of my red blue decks or planeswalkers. So that said, I think it can be fun. I think that pumping up his second ability is fun. Stealing your opponent's creatures is fun too. His mana spread and max HP knock him down a little bit when in terms of fun. And if you're not a big fan of playing with vampires and things like that, maybe you don't find him as interesting. But he's pretty decent in terms of fun, so I give him a B. And so what does that make his final grade? He is a B. Pretty good planeswalker, not one I'm going to use in high stakes events, but definitely a solid option for the dailies, PvE, anything where the objectives are gaining life, creating vampires, etc. Not a bad choice there. So, thank you again, Webcore, for giving me the chance to play this guy. I'm having a lot of fun with the Puzzle Masters 2 cards I've gotten, and I am looking forward to playing with some of the other planeswalkers that we are scheduled to have soon. So, if you pick up Sorin Ravenous Neonate, let me know what you think of him. He's definitely going to be one that you're going to want to pick up in the sale coming in the holiday season. Hopefully he'll be there for a discounted rate. I have no idea. I have no advanced information as far as that goes, but I just imagine he will be there to pick up for a discounted rate. So if you're not super compelled to buy him for money or full price in crystals, I still think that he's worth picking up and adding to your collection. To me, he's by far the best Sorin right now. I do remember when I first started playing the game, Sorin Grim Nemesis was one of the first planeswalkers I picked up for crystals. And since he was the only black and white option, there definitely was a high use of him at the time, but you never see him anymore. He's been way outclassed at this point. That low life total is just brutal. And I'm glad they didn't give this Sorin that bad of a life total. And then I see the other Sorins very rarely. This one is by far superior to all the mono color Sorins. So that is my review on Sorin Ravenous Neonate. Looking forward to reviewing the next Puzzle Masters Planeswalkers, as well as some of the cards that they have given us to play around with. So, as always, stay tuned on this channel if you're not yet subscribed, and that all sounds like something that you will look forward to. Give my channel a follow and consider turning on notifications for this channel as well. I do probably 1 or 2 videos a week, so my channel is pretty active. And if you enjoy what I do, don't miss out. All right, see you next time.